Good morning, YouTube. Warbles on a lot here. Sunday, the 26th of February, 2017. Just getting ready for the Sunday roundtable discussion.
Sort of open warfare has broken out among the federal Liberals, this once grand and dignified political party. Well, in recent days, it has resembled nothing so much as a pub brawl. The drama started with Tony Abbott's call to keep Conservatives within the Liberal Party. First, at his launch of a new book, Making Australia Right, that's edited by James Allen. Labor Light, that's how Tony Abbott called the coalition under Malcolm Turnbull's leadership. Then he went to Sky News later to warn about the Conservative splintering from the Liberal Party. Here he is on the Bolt Report.
We had the Cory Bernardi breakaway. One Nation support is surging. Now, much as I think Pauline Hanson is a much more mature political operator now than she was, the fact is minor parties, fringe parties are much better at grievance than they are at solutions. So if you want a good government, you really have no option but to back the Liberal National Coalition. But plainly, there are lots of people who are concerned about our direction, and plainly, the risk is that we will drift to defeat if we don't lift our game.
Former Prime Minister Tony Abbott on Sky News this week. Not surprisingly, the current Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, hit back.
I'm not going to be distracted by outbursts like that. We all know what it's about. As Matthias Cormann said, it's sad.
Well, I don't know about you, but for me, the episode brings back memories of you remember the Rudd Gillard stoush a few years ago? What do you think? Well, to help us understand what the Abbott Manifesto means for the Liberal Party and the nation more broadly, let's turn to our Sunday roundtable. Rebecca Weiser is a research associate at the Centre for Independent Studies in Sydney. She's also a contributor to the book that Tony Abbott launched on Thursday night. That's called Making Australia Right, published by Concord. Hi there, Rebecca.
Hi, lovely to be here.
Miriam Lyons is the founding director of the Centre for Policy Development. She's currently working with GetUp. Miriam, nice to be with you.
Good morning.
Anne Tiernan is Professor in the School of Government and International Relations at Griffith University in Brisbane. G'day, Anne. Great to be in touch again.
Morning, Tom. Good to be with you.
Anne, let's start with you. Your thoughts about Abbott's Conservative Manifesto and what it means for the Liberal Party.
Yeah, well, it's a very radical manifesto in lots of ways. Cutting immigration, slashing the renewable energy target, abolishing the Human Rights Commission, and, most intriguingly and radical constitutionally, I think, gutting the capacity of the Senate to block the government's agenda at a referendum. So, the Liberal Party was, as Judy Brett wrote in her terrific book, Liberals and the Moral Middle Class, actually, a much more centrist right party than the party that Tony Abbott kind of envisages. And it's just, the whole reaction of his colleagues to this being a sort of a proxy leadership war has sort of obscured, I think, some of these more radical elements. I think in part of his proposal, he's gotten pretty heavily slapped down by colleagues. The whole economic dimension of what he proposes is, I think, consistent with criticisms of Abbott that he really doesn't have a great command of the economics of these kinds of issues, which was frequently asserted when he was in office.
John Howard and Peter Costello all too often say that the Liberal Party is the custodian of the centre-right tradition. Miriam, is the Tony Abbott Manifesto the way forward for the Liberal Party?
Look, I've really got to hand it to Tony. I didn't think it was possible for him to get any more out of touch with either voters or reality than he was as Prime Minister. But with this manifesto, he's pulled it off. So congratulations. Look, this is a really great manifesto for Cory Bernardi's Conservative Party. It's not a manifesto for an electable coalition. There's a big problem for, I think, Mr. Abbott and for others like him, which is that we have compulsory voting in this country. So you can't just govern by playing to your hard right fringe. You can't form an electable majority that way. And most Australians just aren't as conservative as Tony Abbott is. Not only the man, but his policies were wildly unpopular when he was actually Prime Minister, and they're no more popular now. He seems to have forgotten that the leather jacket wearing Turnbull, the guy who believed in marriage equality, acting on global warming, was a big fan of renewable energy, was more popular than the Turnbull of today. And in fact, possibly the only thing that could actually rescue Malcolm Turnbull from the electoral consequences of doing Tony Abbott-like speeches is being a attacked by a man who's even more unpopular than he is. You know, if he really thinks that this kind of hardcore conservatism is more electable, he should probably go join Cory Bernardi's party.
Well, Rebecca, you've heard all this. I mean, in many respects, Miriam and Anne are reflecting the media consensus at the weekend. You go through the pages, you've got Mark Kenny in the Fairfax Press, Laurie Oakes here in the Newswinter tabloids saying Tony shows little promise. We had Laura Tingle in the Financial Review. She even went so far as to say the Tony Abbott, quote, is a destructive force and an utter waste of space. Plausible analysis?
Well, I think Laura Tingle's position has been, when Abbott was Prime Minister, was pretty clear, and a lot of people, particularly in the commentariat, really couldn't actually listen to what Abbott said. They reacted so strongly. The reality, of course, is that he had many very important achievements during his time as Prime Minister, and I won't go through all of those, but suffice to say that we had a humanitarian crisis on our doorstep. We no longer have that in the form of we now have an orderly migration program restored. We did manage to reduce the renewable energy target from 28% down to 23%. And I think the recognition now for many people around the country is that they've realised that a renewable energy target is very dangerous so long as you don't have the policy, so long as you don't have the means of actually storing renewable energy. But the cost is extremely high. And I think the experience in South Australia has persuaded very many people around the country that we need to look pragmatically at what is actually going to be achieved by this target, and people are really worried about it now.
Okay, well, and you're from...
Move on to that quickly.
Yep.
Because, Rebecca, not only are you wrong, but people know that you're wrong. So Tony Abbott's own commissioned review of the RED, led by coal-loving, climate-denying Dick Warburton, found that getting rid of the renewable energy target would push up people's power bills, not bring them down. The majority of voters actually think that the failure of the electricity market to respond to extreme weather is responsible for the blackouts, and they're right. 55% of coalition voters don't just love the existing renewable energy target, they love Labor's plan for going 50% renewable by 2030, right? So the majority
Well, hang on, we did have a
voters,
federal election in 2013 where there was a huge backlash against climate mitigation.
What I'm saying is that the absolute latest polling, after 6 months of a very cynical campaign against renewable energy by the people who would really like to keep the profits of coal-fired power stations in the owners of coal-fired power stations, has not actually made a dent in people's love of renewable energy.
Well, if I could just cut in there, for a moment, Miriam. We had a federal election. Labor took this policy of a 50% renewable target to the 2016 election, and they lost on it. So, and I think that what has happened since then, we'll find out at the next election. But the reality is that this target requires that we build, for example, wind turbines, a target simply that cannot be achieved. All it will achieve at the moment, going up to 2020, is to increase the price of electricity. And I am certain that nobody wants to pay more for electricity that doesn't even achieve the goal of reducing emissions.
And what about Abbott's point about Hanson's One Nation? It has, I mean, you're from the Sunshine State. You know it's more than anyone that it's made a remarkable resurgence at the expense of Turnbull's coalition at the last election, or that's what Abbott says. Could Abbott's conservative message help bring back Conservatives to the party power?
Look, I mean, I think it's difficult to say. I think he was exactly right that the One Nation Party and Cory Bernardi, are very good at articulating grievance, and less so on solutions. But a lot of the issues that he's identified in his, manifesto are really culture war issues that aren't going to create jobs in rural Queensland or in the debate about the RET and other things might be very salient in Sydney and Melbourne and perhaps in Canberra, but in the communities of Mackay and the North, where people genuinely are having major, difficulties, they've got negative equity in their homes. I think their primary concerns are about jobs and the future of jobs and their capacity to participate, and they see this debate that's going on among people about.
Well, what about the Abbott manifesto? I mean, one of the controversial aspects that have been raised over the last few days is the question of those spending cuts. Couldn't you argue that the Abbott manifesto will further alienate those battlers who were turned off by the Abbott hockey budget?
Well, I mean, if you look at it, I think what Tony Abbott did in that speech on Thursday night was to quote Gary Johns, quite interestingly, a Labor minister, who talked about the need not just to appeal to people in economic terms, but this is a battle that you have to win by talking to people about a whole suite of ideas. And I think that most people still understand that we have to have a balanced budget and we have to reduce the deficit. And so I think that what we're talking about here is genuine, as Anne rightly said, people are concerned about jobs. Well, we've had BHP, the head of BHP, say this week that we have a renewable policy, which is leading us towards an economic catastrophe. I mean, we have what is demonstrably a chaotic policy at the moment, where we're talking about both subsidising renewables, which will make coal unaffordable in this country, and now we're talking about subsidising coal as well. So I think there's a need to reset and to really think from first principles, what are we trying to achieve and in what time frame?
Look, 75% of coal-burning power stations are already past their use-by date and need to be decommissioned and replaced with something else. And it's not just me saying this, it's the in-house economist at AGL. And right now, the renewable energy target is the only thing that's actually bringing new capacity online. Because it's a market mechanism, it's bringing the cheapest new capacity online, and that's solar and wind. Okay, and electricity is an essential service, like, say, the internet. And like the internet, it's not good enough to just say, oh, look, a better technology exists. Let's just kind of hope the market sorts out that transition. If you want a smooth transition, you need to plan. The market is broken. We do need to fix it. There are plenty of ideas out there about how to do it. The latest that we've heard from Turnbull in investing more in things like pumped hydro or battery storage, that's the direction that we need to be going. And everybody recognises that. If the coalition actually cared about power prices, they'd be talking about the 2012 review by the Australian Electricity Market Commission, which found that we could save citizens $12 billion by actually making power companies save their customers money instead of wasting it. We saw like a little hint of actually a glimmering of an attempt to deal with a real problem, which is price gouging by large energy companies, when we saw Josh Frydenberg the other day saying that we should actually empower the Australian energy regulator to crack down on overcharging via network companies. That's the kind of thing that's really been pushing up power prices. That's the kind of thing
Miriam, I think what we just have to look at quite calmly is that the renewable energy target only targets renewable energy. Now, if you're interested in the cheapest way to reduce emissions, then you should be technology neutral, and that would mean a much bigger role for gas as a transitional fuel, and that is precisely what's not happening because of the distortions in the allocation of capital under a renewable energy target.
You're on Sunday Extra on RN. You're listening to our Sunday Roundtable. Rebecca Weissner, Miriam Lyons, Anne Tiernan. The subject, the Abbott manifesto that has sparked tensions in the Liberal Party. Now, what does all this mean, ladies, for public policy and the debate generally in this country? Before we get your reactions, let's hear from the former Treasury Secretary, Ken Henry, this week.
Our politicians have dug themselves into deep trenches from which they fire insults designed merely to cause political embarrassment. The country that Australians want cannot even be imagined from these trenches. The reform narrative of an earlier period has been buried by the language of fear and anger. Language doesn't seek to explain, language rather that seeks to confuse and to frighten. And meanwhile, the platform burns.
As Ken Henry, the former Treasury Secretary, is now the Chairman of National Australia Bank. That was in a speech to the Committee for Economic Development of Australia, CEDA, this week. Miriam, your thoughts on the Ken Henry warning? I mean, is economic reform a thing of the past?
Look, I think that there's plenty of room for change and there is plenty of appetite for change. The problem is at the moment that we have, but not just people who are, all in the trenches, all in the gutter. We have people who are denying the very existence of the stars, right? So, there's always room for conflict in politics about how to solve the problems. The difficulty today is that we have too much airspace being given to people who are denying that verifiable problems actually exist. So, instead of arguing about whether or not we need to do anything about global warming. We should be having an argument about, you know, we should adopt Rebecca Weiss's approach, which sounds very much like an emissions trading scheme in order to...
There we go. That's the upload limit. Back with another video.